The courtroom smells like old wood and fear. I'm sitting at a table covered with papers my lawyer keeps shuffling, and the sound is almost loud enough to drown out the whispers behind me. Almost. My 2 children are beside me, Emma clutching her stuffed rabbit, and Mason staring at his shoes like they might give him answers. The tension in the room is almost suffocating as every eye watches my every move. I can feel the weight of their stares. My family. The people who should have protected me. Instead, they're scattered across the courtroom like chess pieces, some on my uncle's side, some pretending to be neutral, none of them really on mine. The tall windows let in sharp morning light that makes everything look too clear, too real. There's nowhere to hide here. My uncle's lawyer stands up smooth as anything, holding a stack of documents. His voice fills the room with a confidence I've never been able to muster. He talks about my character, my fitness as a mother, my supposed instability. He uses words that sound official but feel like knives. Some of those papers, I know, have been changed, manipulated. But proving that is another thing entirely. The judge calls for order, and the room goes silent. My heart pounds so hard, I wonder if the people next to me can hear it. I close my eyes for just a second and whisper a prayer so quiet it's barely a thought. God, are you here? Can you see this? Because right now it feels like I'm standing alone in front of a firing squad, and the only thing I have is this tiny, fragile hope that you might actually care. I open my eyes. The judge is looking at me, waiting. My lawyer leans over and whispers something I don't catch. Emma squeezes my hand. And all I can think is, how did I get here? How did loving my children and trying to protect them lead to this moment where I might lose them? The truth is, this didn't start today. It didn't even start last month when the custody papers arrived. This started years ago, in a family that looked perfect from the outside but was rotting from the inside, and somehow I was always the one blamed for the smell. 2 years earlier, I sat at a different table. This one long and expensive, covered with dishes I couldn't pronounce and wine I wasn't allowed to touch. The dining room in my uncle's house was built to impress, with gold-framed paintings on the walls and a chandelier that cost more than I made in a year. My family gathered there every few months for these dinners that were supposed to bring us together, but always left me feeling more alone. This was not a one-time thing, but a pattern that shaped my whole life. That evening, my cousin Jessica arrived late, laughing about some shopping trip gone wrong. Everyone turned to her like she was the sun. My aunt immediately jumped up to get her a plate, and my uncle started asking about her new job with that warm pride in his voice that I'd heard 1,000 times, just never directed at me. Jessica's been promoted again, my uncle announced, raising his glass. District manager at 27. That's the kind of success this family should be proud of. Everyone toasted. I lifted my glass too, smiling the smile I'd learned to wear. Emma and Mason sat quietly in the corner of the room, playing with some toys I'd brought to keep them occupied. No one asked about them. No one asked about me. Sarah, my aunt said, and I looked up, hopeful for a second. Did you remember to bring the dessert I asked for? I had, but I'd made a strawberry pie instead of the apple one she wanted because Emma was allergic to the cinnamon she always used. I brought strawberry, I said. Emma can't have strawberry? Her face pinched. I specifically said apple. Jessica loves apple pie. I'm sorry, I just thought. You never listen, she said, and turned back to Jessica, just like that. Dismissed. My uncle shook his head slightly, the way he always did when I disappointed him. Again. The conversation moved on without me. They talked about family business, about investments, about Jessica's apartment renovation. When my cousin made a mistake, mixed up a date, forgot someone's name, they laughed it off. When I spoke, if I spoke at all, I could feel them tolerating me. Mason dropped his toy car, and it clattered across the floor toward the table. My uncle's expression darkened. Sarah, can you please control your children? Some of us are trying to have a conversation. Sorry, I whispered. getting up to grab Mason in the car. Emma followed me, sensing the shift in the room. We spent the rest of the dinner in the hallway. I'd been going to these family dinners for 17 years, ever since my parents died and my uncle's family took me in. 17 years of trying to earn a place at that table. I could count at least 40 different gatherings where I'd brought the wrong dish, said the wrong thing, or simply existed in the wrong way. 40 times I'd watched Jessica arrive late, be forgiven instantly, be celebrated for the smallest achievement. In all those years, I'd never once heard my uncle use that warm, proud tone when talking about me. Not once. The math was simple and brutal. Some people belonged, and some people were just tolerated. Later that night, after I'd put the kids to bed in our small apartment across town, I sat on my own bed with the lamp on and everything else dark. My Bible was open on my lap to Psalm 27. I'd marked it up over the years, underlined verses, written notes in the margins, folded down the corner. The words blurred a little as I read them again. The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? So far, my family's pattern of favoritism and blame had left me feeling isolated, but Psalm 27 was a lifeline in dark nights. I traced the words with my finger. The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? Psalm 27:1. Whom shall I fear? My uncle, for one. My family's judgment, for another. The possibility that they were right about me, that I really was the problem, the disappointment, the one who didn't measure up. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me, Psalm 27,001 deaths. That verse always hit differently, because it felt true in a way that hurt. My parents had passed away when I was young, and I'd been raised by my uncle's family. They took me in, but they never let me forget I was charity, a burden, someone to be managed, not loved. I folded my hands and prayed out loud, just barely above a whisper so I wouldn't wake the kids in the next room. God, I don't know if I'm worth saving. I don't know if you even see me the way my family doesn't. But if you're there, if you're real the way the pastor says you are, then please, please protect my children. Don't let them grow up feeling invisible like I do. The words hung in the air. No lightning strike. No voice from heaven. Just the sound of a car passing outside and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. But something in my chest loosened just a little, like maybe, just maybe, I had been heard. 6 months later, I found myself in a circle of folding chairs at church on a Sunday afternoon. The fellowship room smelled like coffee and old carpet, and there were maybe 10 of us there for the small group Bible study. This was the first time I dared speak truth about my pain with others who understood. We were talking about the prodigal son, that story in Luke 15 verses 11 through 32, about the kid who runs away, wastes everything, and comes back to a father who throws him a party. But the discussion kept circling back to the other son, the older one who stayed home and did everything right, but still felt unseen. Our small group leader, a woman named Linda with gray hair and kind eyes, asked if anyone related to the older brother. My hand went up before I could stop it. I think, I started, then stopped. Everyone was looking at me. I think I know what it's like to do everything right and still not be enough. To watch someone else get all the love and celebration while you're just there. Linda nodded. Tell us more, Sarah. So I did. I told them about the dinners, about Jessica, about feeling like no matter how hard I tried, I was always falling short in my family's eyes, about wondering if God saw me any differently than they did. I don't know how to forgive people who won't even admit they've done something wrong, I said. My voice cracked. And I don't know if I even belong in God's family if I'm this bitter. Linda waited until the room was quiet again. Then she said, the father in that story runs to both sons, the one who left and the one who stayed. He loves them both, even when they can't love each other. Maybe the question isn't whether you're good enough to belong. Maybe it's whether you'll accept that you already do. I let that sink in. The idea that God might run toward me, not away from me. That belonging might be a gift, not something I had to earn. On the drive home, I kept thinking about it. About whether forgiveness could break the cycle of hurt. about whether God was inviting me into a different kind of family, one where I didn't have to prove my worth every single day. 3 months later, everything came to a head. The pressure was mounting and the family's control tightening, but I was quietly trying to find a way through. My uncle called a family meeting at his office, the one attached to the family business where decisions got made and money got moved. I knew before I walked in that this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a verdict. He sat behind his massive desk, and I sat across from him in a chair that felt too small. My aunt and 2 of my cousins were there too, standing like a wall behind him. "Sarah," he began, using that calm voice he reserved for when he was about to say something devastating. "We need to talk about your situation." My situation. That's what he called my life. My children, my struggle to make ends meet while working 2 jobs and trying to raise kids in a world that felt like it was constantly tipping against me. "I'm doing fine," I said, even though we both knew it was a lie. "You're not. You're barely holding on. And now I hear you're talking to a lawyer about custody arrangements?" I went cold. How did he know that? I'd only consulted with one attorney, and I'd been so careful. "I'm trying to protect my kids," I said. "From what?" "From family, from people who actually care about their well-being." He leaned forward. "Sarah, you're making a mistake. If you pursue this, you'll lose. You have no money, no stability, no support. The court will see that." "I have support," I said. "I have friends. I have church." He laughed, actually laughed. "Church? Sarah, this is the real world. You need resources. And if you go against this family, you'll find out just how alone you really are." My aunt nodded. My cousins said nothing, but their silence was agreement enough. "I'm not asking for much," I said, my voice shaking. "I just want my kids to be safe. I just want what's best for them." "Then drop this," he said. "Accept that we know what's best. Let us help you on our terms. Otherwise, I promise you, this will not end well." It wasn't a threat. It was a certainty. And sitting there in that office, surrounded by family who felt like strangers, I realized that I was truly on my own, or at least that's how it felt. The only question was whether God was still there, somewhere beyond their voices. 1 week before the hearing, I sat in my car outside the church early in the morning. I'd dropped the kids at a friend's house and driven here without really deciding to. The parking lot was empty except for one other car, probably the pastor's. The sun was just coming up, turning everything pink and gold. I needed to think, to pray, to figure out what I was about to walk into. I pulled out my phone and looked at the notes I'd been keeping. Bible verses, mostly. Things I'd found that helped me breathe when everything felt impossible. One of them was from Psalm 31, verse 1. "In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame." I wondered if that was true, if I could take refuge in God even when my own family had shut me out. If shame was something I could actually escape, or if it was just written into my bones now. The courtroom hearing was 1 week away. The lawyer had prepped me, the documents were ready, but I still felt like I was walking into a battle I couldn't win. I closed my eyes and prayed again, out loud this time because the car was private and I needed to hear my own voice saying the words. "God, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, but I'm asking you to be with me, to help me protect my kids, to show me what truth looks like when everything feels like lies. And if I'm the one who's wrong here, if I'm the one who's messed up, then please show me that too, because I just want to do what's right." The sun kept rising. The parking lot stayed quiet. I sat there for another 20 minutes, not because I got some clear answer, but because I needed to remember that I wasn't completely alone, that somewhere beyond my family's judgment and my own fear, there might still be a God who actually cared. When I finally started the car and drove away, I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel brave, but I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, a stubborn refusal to give up. Not because I was strong, but because something, someone, was holding me together even when I wanted to fall apart. And now here I am in this courtroom with the judge looking at me and my uncle's lawyer still talking, and my children beside me wondering what happens next. The journey from that family dinner 2 years ago to this moment has been nothing but pain and pressure and moments where I almost gave up. But I haven't, not yet. And maybe that's the miracle. Not that everything is fixed, not that justice is guaranteed, but that I'm still here, still fighting, still believing that God sees me even when no one else does. The judge clears his throat. My lawyer touches my arm. It's my turn to speak, and I realize that everything I've been through, all the rejection and the late-night prayers and the small group meetings and the whispered promises from Scripture, has been leading to this moment. I take a breath. I look at my children, and I prepare to tell the truth, whatever it costs me. I'm standing at the moment I've been dreading and preparing for all at once. The judge is waiting for me to speak. My children are beside me, and years of family lies are about to get dragged into the light. My name is Sarah, and this custody hearing is the culmination of a lifetime of being blamed for things I didn't do and rejected by people who were supposed to protect me. But I'm still here. I haven't given up. And now it's my turn to tell the truth. The lies stung sharp, but I refuse to be silenced. My uncle's lawyer stands again, and this time he's holding papers that make my stomach drop. Financial statements, bank records, documents that supposedly prove I'm unstable, irresponsible, unfit. I recognize some of them, bills I paid late because I was working 2 jobs and caring for 2 kids alone. Others I've never seen before. Your Honor, the lawyer says, his voice smooth and confident, these records clearly demonstrate a pattern of financial irresponsibility. Miss Sarah has repeatedly failed to meet basic obligations, putting her children's welfare at risk. My lawyer shoots to her feet. Objection. Those documents haven't been properly authenticated. They're bank statements, Your Honor. Official records. The judge looks at the papers, then at me. I can feel my face burning. The whispers behind me start up again. Relatives who've already decided I'm guilty of whatever charges get thrown at me. Then the witnesses start. My uncle has brought 3 people who are willing to say I'm a bad mother. One is a neighbor who once saw Mason throw a tantrum in the driveway. Another is my aunt, who testifies that I've always been difficult and unstable since childhood. The third is a family friend who says my children seem anxious and withdrawn whenever he's seen them. None of it is true, or rather all of it is twisted, real moments taken out of context and reshaped into weapons. My lawyer does her best. She objects. She asks pointed questions on cross-examination, but the damage is done. I can see it on the judge's face, doubt creeping in, replacing whatever goodwill I might have had. I close my eyes for just a second and pray silently. God, I don't know how to fight this. They're drowning me in lies and I can barely breathe. Please, just please. When I open my eyes, my uncle is watching me with that cold, satisfied look I know too well. The look that says he's already won. During the midday recess, I step into the hallway with Emma and Mason, hoping for a moment to breathe. Instead, my family surrounds us. Not aggressively, they're too smart for that. But in a tight semicircle that makes it clear I'm not welcome to leave. The family's coldness cut deeper than the courtroom's formal coldness. Sarah, my aunt says, her voice low and dripping with false concern, you're making a terrible mistake. You know that, don't you? Emma's hand tightens in mine. Mason presses against my leg. I'm doing what's right for my kids, I say. Right? My cousin Jessica laughs softly. Sarah, you're embarrassing yourself. And the whole family. This little drama you're creating, it's not going to end well for you. Another relative leans in. You've always been too sensitive, taking things personally. Maybe if you'd just learn to let things go. Like all the times you let things go for Jessica? The words slip out before I can stop them. The silence that follows is sharp enough to cut. My aunt's expression hardens. That's exactly the problem, she says. You're bitter, you're jealous, and now you're dragging innocent children into your issues. They are innocent, I say, my voice shaking. That's why I'm protecting them. From what? From family who loves them? My uncle has appeared now, joining the circle. Sarah, I tried to help you. We all did, but you've made your choice. When this is over, don't expect us to be here to pick up the pieces. Mason starts to cry quietly. Emma looks up at me with wide, scared eyes, and I realize that no matter what I say, they've already decided. I'm the scapegoat. I always have been, and they need me to stay in that role so they can keep pretending everything else is fine. Excuse me, I say, and push through the circle, my children following close behind. I find the bathroom at the end of the hall and lock myself in a stall while Emma and Mason wait outside with my lawyer. My hands are shaking. My heart is racing. The weight of everything, the lies, the betrayal, the years of rejection, crushes down on me like I'm being buried alive. This prayer was my quiet rebellion against bitterness. I lean against the cold metal wall and close my eyes. The words come out barely above a whisper. Jesus, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can keep forgiving people who keep hurting me. Matthew says to love your enemies, but how? How do I love people who treat my children like they're disposable? How do I forgive when they won't even admit they've done anything wrong? The bathroom is silent except for the hum of the ventilation fan. No voice from heaven, no sudden peace, just me and my exhaustion and the prayer I can barely get out. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. I remember that verse from small group. Jesus' invitation. I'd underlined it in my Bible, written a note in the margin. Is this really for me? I take a shaky breath and keep praying. I'm so tired, Jesus. I'm tired of carrying this anger and this hurt. I don't want to become like them, cold and hard and convinced I'm always right. But I also don't know how to let it go. If you're real, if you actually care, then I need you to help me. Because on my own, I'm just falling apart. Something loosens in my chest. Not dramatically, not like a lightning bolt or a movie moment, just a small shift, like a window opening in a stuffy room. I remember another verse from that same passage in Matthew. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:44-45. That's the part I'd always skipped over, the impossible part. But maybe that's exactly what makes it real. Maybe loving enemies isn't about feeling warm and fuzzy toward them. Maybe it's about choosing not to let their poison infect my heart. I wipe my eyes, straighten my shoulders, and walk back out to face whatever comes next. The afternoon session starts with a surprise. My lawyer stands and asks permission to present new evidence. The judge nods, and she produces a sealed envelope, old, yellowed at the edges with my mother's handwriting on the front. The famous carefully controlled narrative cracked wide open. Your Honor, my lawyer says, this letter was discovered among the estate documents that were supposedly lost years ago. It was written by Sarah's mother shortly before her death and entrusted to a family attorney who only recently came forward. My uncle's face goes white. His lawyer stands immediately, objecting, but the judge waves him down. I'll allow it, the judge says. Continue. My lawyer begins reading. My mother's voice, captured in ink, fills the courtroom. She talks about her fears for me after her death, about how she'd seen the favoritism building, how she'd worried about my uncle's control over the family finances, about how she'd set aside specific assets for me and my future children, assets that were supposed to be held in trust, assets that disappeared after she died. The letter goes on. It names dates, amounts, manipulations. My mother had documented everything, even as she was dying, trying to protect me from exactly what ended up happening. She'd known, she'd seen it coming, and she'd done what she could to leave me proof. The courtroom erupts in whispers. Family members shift uncomfortably. My uncle's lawyer scrambles for a response, but what can he say? It's all there in black and white in my mother's own hand. I sit frozen, tears streaming down my face. Shock and vindication and grief all mixed together. My mother fought for me even from beyond the grave. She saw me. She believed me. And she left me this weapon to fight back with. But even as I feel that surge of hope, I also feel the weight of what this means. Exposing this doesn't just vindicate me. It destroys the family's carefully constructed image. It proves that my uncle, the pillar of the family, has been lying and stealing for years. It tears down everything they've built their identity on. And some part of me, the part that still remembers being a little girl desperate for their approval, grieves that loss. The judge calls for a brief recess to review the letter. During that time, the courtroom is chaos. Family members arguing in hushed voices. My uncle sitting stone-faced while his lawyer frantically makes phone calls. My children looking at me with questions I don't know how to answer yet. This was the moment I chose courage over silence. When we reconvene, the judge asks if I'd like to make a statement. My lawyer nods encouragingly, and I stand, walk to the witness stand, and sit down. "Miss Sarah," the judge begins gently, "this has clearly been a difficult day. Can you tell the court, in your own words, why you believe you should retain custody of your children?" I take a breath. The courtroom is silent. Every eye is on me, and I realize that for the first time in my life, someone in authority is actually listening to me. "Your Honor, I'm not a perfect mother. I work 2 jobs. Sometimes we eat cereal for dinner. Sometimes I'm too tired to help with homework the way I should. But I love my children with everything I have. I would do anything to protect them." My voice shakes, but I keep going. I grew up in this family as the one who was always blamed. For things I did, things I didn't do, things that were just convenient to pin on me. I was raised by my uncle after my parents died, and I'm grateful he took me in. But I was never allowed to just be. I was always the problem child, the difficult one, the disappointment. And I watched as my cousin Jessica got celebrated for the same things I got criticized for. The judge is writing notes. My uncle's face is rigid. For years, I thought maybe they were right. Maybe there was something wrong with me. Maybe I didn't deserve to be loved or valued. And then I had Emma and Mason, and I promised myself they would never feel that way. Never. They would know they were wanted and loved and precious, no matter what. I pause, swallowing hard. I've been going to church, trying to understand what it means to have faith. And I keep hearing that God loves me, that I'm His child, that I have worth not because of what I do, but because of who He made me to be. And that's what I want for Emma and Mason. I want them to grow up knowing they're loved, really loved, not just tolerated or managed or used as pawns in family battles. The judge nods slowly. "And what about the allegations against you? The financial issues? The reports of instability?" "Some of it's true," I admit. "I've struggled. I've been late on bills. I've made mistakes. But I've never put my children at risk. And a lot of what you heard today, those bank statements, some of those witnesses, that's not the whole truth. It's pieces of truth twisted into something else. I'm not asking to be seen as perfect. I'm asking to be seen fairly, and I'm asking that my children be protected from the same patterns that hurt me." "Thank you, Miss Sarah," the judge says. "You may step down." I walk back to my seat on shaking legs. My lawyer squeezes my shoulder. Emma and Mason are watching me with a mix of pride and confusion. I did it. I told the truth. Whatever happens now, at least I didn't stay silent. The judge reviews more documents, asks a few more questions of both lawyers, and then announces that he'll issue his decision within the week. The hearing is adjourned. After all the conflict, I was left with a choice to hold on to bitterness or trust Jesus fully. Everyone files out, family members avoiding eye contact, my uncle conferring intensely with his lawyer in the corner, people I don't even know, shaking their heads as they pass me. My lawyer gathers her papers and tells me she thinks we have a real chance now. She leaves to make some calls. And then it's just me, sitting alone at the table in the empty courtroom. The late afternoon sun slants through the windows, painting everything in gold. My children are with a friend in the hallway, giving me a moment to myself. I put my head in my hands and start to cry. Not the angry tears from earlier, not tears of vindication or victory, just exhausted, overwhelmed, uncertain tears. Because even though the letter changes things, even though I spoke my truth, I still don't know how this ends. I don't know if the judge will believe me. I don't know if my family will ever speak to me again. I don't know if I'll ever stop feeling like the rejected child begging for love from people who have none to give. But somewhere underneath all that uncertainty, I feel something else. A quiet presence, like someone sitting with me in the silence, not fixing everything, not making it all better, just there, with me. Refusing to leave even when I feel most alone. God, I whisper into my hands, I don't know what trusting you looks like anymore. I don't know if I won or lost today. I don't know if I did the right thing by exposing all this. But I'm asking you to help me not become bitter, to help me forgive even when it feels impossible, to help me let go of all this anger before it poisons me and my children. The courtroom stays silent. The sun keeps moving. And I sit there broken and uncertain, but somehow still breathing, still holding on, still believing by the thinnest thread that God sees me even when no one else does. I finally stand, dry my eyes, and walk toward the doors where my children are waiting. The battle isn't over, but maybe it's not about winning anymore. Maybe it's about surviving with my heart intact. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for today. The hearing is over, but the real battle is just beginning. The one inside my own heart. My name is Sarah, and after years of being scapegoated by my family, I finally exposed the truth in court. My mother's letter revealed my uncle's manipulations, and I testified about the favoritism and rejection that shaped my entire life. But now, in the quiet aftermath, I have to decide, will I let bitterness consume me, or will I choose to forgive people who may never apologize? That choice feels impossible, but maybe that's exactly where faith becomes real. The next morning, I wake up before the kids. The apartment is quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. I make coffee slowly, measuring the grounds, pouring the water, going through the familiar motions, while my mind is anywhere but present. This scripture was a balm to my wounded soul. I sit at the small kitchen table with my Bible open to Psalm 27, the same passage I'd read years ago when everything started falling apart. But this time, something is different. This time, I'm not just looking for comfort, I'm looking for direction. I read aloud, my voice barely above a whisper so I don't wake Emma and Mason. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Psalm 27,001. The words hit differently now. When I first read this psalm, I was asking God to protect me from my family, to shield me from their rejection, to make them see me and value me. But now, sitting here with the court hearing behind me and an uncertain future ahead, I realize I've been asking the wrong questions. It's not about whether my family will finally accept me. It's about whether I can accept that I don't need them to, whether I can believe that God sees me even when they don't. I close my eyes and pray, really pray, for maybe the first time in days. Jesus, I don't know what happens next. The judge hasn't made his decision. My family probably hates me, and I still wake up every morning feeling like I have to prove I'm worth loving. But what if that's not true? What if you already love me, not because I'm perfect, not because I finally stood up for myself, but just because I'm yours? I open my eyes. The coffee has gone lukewarm. The morning light is starting to come through the window, painting everything soft and gold, and something in my chest, something that's been clenched tight for years, starts to loosen. I'm not asking God to fix my family anymore. I'm asking Him to heal me, to show me what it means to be His daughter, not their scapegoat. 2 days later, I sit in the church office across from Linda. the small group leader who'd listened to me talk about the prodigal son months ago. The office is small and cluttered, shelves full of books, a desk covered with papers, a window looking out onto the parking lot. But it feels safe. How are you holding up? Linda asks, and the genuine concern in her voice almost makes me cry. I don't know, I admit. The hearing went better than I expected, worse than I hoped, and now I just feel stuck. Stuck how? I tried to find the words. I proved they were wrong about me. The letter, the testimony. It's all out there now. But I still feel angry. I still want them to apologize, to admit what they did. And I know they won't. So what do I do with all this bitterness? Linda leans back in her chair, thoughtful. Do you remember what we talked about in small group? About the prodigal son? The older brother, I say. The one who stayed home and did everything right, but still felt unseen. Right. And at the end of that story, we don't know what he chooses. Jesus leaves it open. The Father invites him to the party, but we don't know if he goes in or stays outside in his anger. That's the question Jesus is asking us. Will we accept the Father's love, or will we stay trapped in our resentment? I nod slowly, but it's so hard. They hurt me. They hurt my kids. And they're not sorry. I know. Linda's voice is gentle. But here's what I've learned. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about choosing freedom over bitterness. And it's costly. Jesus tells us to love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. Matthew 5:44. That's not easy. It's not natural. But it's how we become children of God instead of prisoners of our pain. What if I can't, I ask, my voice breaking. What if I'm not strong enough? You're not, Linda says simply. None of us are. That's why we need Jesus. That's why His grace matters. You can't do this on your own, but you're not on your own. I sit with that. The idea that I don't have to be strong enough, that maybe weakness is exactly where God meets us. I want to forgive them, I finally say. I do. But I also want justice. I want them to acknowledge what they did. How do I hold both of those things? You bring them to God, Linda says. You trust that He sees, that He knows. And you choose every day to let go of the bitterness a little bit more, not because they deserve it, but because you do. 1 week later, I am back in the courtroom. The judge has called for a continuation of the hearing to review the new evidence from my mother's letter. My uncle sits across the aisle with his lawyer, his face carefully neutral. Other family members have chosen sides more clearly now, some avoiding eye contact with me, others looking openly hostile. This moment changed everything, not by force but by faith. The judge asks my lawyer to clarify certain details from the letter. She stands, professional and confident, and walks through the timeline, the trust my mother set up, the assets that were supposed to be protected for me, the paper trail showing how my uncle had redirected those funds over the years. It's all laid out now. Undeniable. And I watch my uncle's face as the truth settles over the courtroom like snow. But here's what surprises me. I don't feel triumphant. I don't feel vindicated in the way I thought I would. Instead, I feel sad. Sad that it came to this. Sad that my mother had to write that letter knowing her own brother might betray me. Sad that my uncle chose money and control over family. And somewhere in that sadness, I feel something else. A quiet whisper that sounds like grace. The judge announces he'll issue his final ruling within 2 weeks. Court is adjourned. People start filing out, and I gather Emma and Mason preparing to leave. My uncle walks past without looking at me. My aunt follows, her face pinched and angry. Jessica glances my way but says nothing. And I realize they may never apologize. They may never acknowledge what they did. And I have to be okay with that. Not because it's fair, but because holding on to my anger is only hurting me. That evening, I'm at home watching Emma and Mason play in the living room. They've built a fort out of couch cushions and blankets, and their laughter fills the apartment. I sit on the floor nearby, ostensibly supervising, but really just thinking. After all the conflict, this choice to forgive was the true victory. The court case will end however it ends. The judge will rule, and we'll live with that. But the real question, the one that matters for my soul and my children's future, is whether I'll let this destroy me or transform me. I think about Matthew 5, the verses Linda talked about. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:43-45. Love my enemies. The words feel impossible, but maybe that's the point. Maybe Jesus asks impossible things so we'll realize we can't do them without him. I close my eyes and pray silently while the kids play. Jesus, I choose to forgive my uncle. I choose to forgive my aunt and my cousins and everyone who hurt me, not because it feels good or because they deserve it, but because you forgave me first. Help me mean it. Help me not just say the words, but actually let go. And help me show my children what it looks like to love like you love, imperfectly, but honestly. Mason crashes into the couch fort and it collapses. Emma shrieks with laughter instead of anger. They start rebuilding it together, negotiating over which pillows go where. And I realize, this is what healing looks like. Not perfection, not the absence of struggle, but the choice to keep building, keep trying, keep loving, even when things fall apart. Several months later, everything looks different. The judge ruled in my favor. I kept full custody, and the court mandated financial restitution for what my uncle had taken. But the victory feels hollow sometimes because my family still doesn't speak to me. Jessica sends a Christmas card with no note inside. My aunt won't return my calls, and my uncle has apparently told everyone that I destroyed the family for money. But here's what they don't see. I'm free. On a Tuesday morning, I kneel beside Emma and Mason at our small breakfast table. We've started doing this every morning, praying together before school. What should we thank God for today? I ask. Pancakes, Mason says immediately, eyeing his plate. Emma thinks longer. That we have a home, and that Mom is happy now. My throat tightens. Out of the mouths of children. Okay, I say, taking their hands. Dear Jesus, thank you for pancakes. Thank you for this home and for keeping us together. Thank you that even when things are hard, you give us what we need. Help us today to be kind and brave. Amen. Amen, they echo. And I realize this is peace. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of God in the middle of them. Jesus said, Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. This is what rest feels like. Not having everything fixed, but knowing I'm not carrying it alone anymore. Later that afternoon, my phone rings. It's a number I recognize, one of my cousins. I hesitate, my finger hovering over the answer button. Part of me wants to pick up, to hope that maybe this is the olive branch I've been waiting for. But I know better now. I let it go to voicemail. When I listen later, it's exactly what I expected, a request for me to stop making trouble and think about the family's reputation. Nothing about reconciliation, nothing about truth or healing. I delete the message and feel for the first time no guilt about it. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. God's grace helps me hold firm without bitterness, to protect my children without punishing myself for the distance my family chose to create. That evening, I'm at church for the midweek service. The sanctuary is only half full, but the worship feels as genuine as Sunday morning. We sing a song about being adopted into God's family, about belonging not because we earned it, but because Jesus chose us. And I cry, not sad tears, relieved tears. For years, I thought my worth depended on my family accepting me, but now I understand I already have a family. A Father who sees me, a place where I belong. Paul wrote, The Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. And by him we cry, Abba, Father. Romans 8:15. I am God's daughter, not my uncle's charity case, not the family scapegoat, not the one who has to prove her worth, just his, beloved, enough. Later that night, after Emma and Mason are asleep, I stand at my bedroom window looking out at the streetlights. The apartment is small. The furniture is secondhand. We're living on a tight budget, and I still work 2 jobs. Nothing about my circumstances screams victory. But I'm not bitter anymore. I'm not consumed by what my family thinks of me or haunted by their rejection. The wounds are still there. They probably always will be, but they're healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but healing nonetheless. I think about you, whoever's listening to this. Maybe you've got your own family wounds, your own scapegoat story, your own uncle or parent or sibling who made you feel invisible. And maybe you're wondering if forgiveness is even possible when the people who hurt you won't admit what they did. I don't have easy answers, but I know this: holding on to bitterness only poisons you, and forgiveness. Real forgiveness isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about choosing freedom. It's about trusting that God sees the truth even when others don't. It's about believing that your worth isn't determined by whether broken people can see it. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. He doesn't promise to fix everyone else. He promises to carry you when you can't carry yourself anymore. So maybe today you take one small step. Not toward reconciliation necessarily. Sometimes that's not safe or wise. But toward freedom. Toward letting go of the anger that's eating you alive. Toward believing that God's love is real, even when human love fails you. I'm still learning how to do this. There are days I slip back into bitterness, days I fantasize about my family finally apologizing. But those days are getting fewer. And the days where I feel God's peace, where I remember I'm His daughter, not their scapegoat, those days are becoming my new normal. It's not a fairy tale ending, but it's real, and it's enough.